And we're waiting on our final panelist here to enter the meeting. So while we wait for him, I'll go ahead and get started with some housekeeping items. Hi, my name is Amber Mendenhall. I am an event coordinator for the WSU Alumni Association. And I've been putting together some of these career and professional development events, and we decided to organize this peer panel success stories event for you. We have some really great panelists ready to talk to you about their professional paths, and they're all WSU alumni, and so we're really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. We're going to have some pre-prepared questions for our panelists that I will be posing to them. If you have a question that you think of while they're answering, feel free to either chat to host, or you can chat to me in the chat function here in Zoom. You'll find that button at the bottom of your screen. I've just asked participants that are here to chat your name and maybe how you found out about this event. So if you can do that, if you haven't already, that would be awesome. And I think I can go ahead and introduce our panelists. We're still missing Garrett, but I'm sure he'll hop on here shortly. So we're really excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for choosing to attend. I hope this is beneficial for everyone. So our first panelist is Lindsay Elhart. You can see her video is on. Lindsay is a data analyst at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. So she's in the healthcare industry. Just a little brief bio about Lindsay. She's been working in similar roles for several years and is passionate about effective visualization and sharing of data. On weekends, she can be found attending local speaker series or finding new routes to run. So that is Lindsay, and we'll hear from her shortly. Next, we have Shauna, and I believe your last name is pronounced Weedy, is that correct?
It's Weddy.
Weddy, okay, so close. All right, perfect. So, and you can see Shauna in the video there. Shauna is a veterinarian and medical director. So her industry is veterinary medicine. She graduated from WSU with a bachelor's degree in 2010. She continued her study at WSU's College of Veterinary Medicine, earning her doctorate of veterinary medicine in 2014. For the past 6 years, she has practiced as a small animal veterinarian in the Puget Sound region. Currently, she is the medical director at 7 Doctor Veterinary Hospital in Lakewood, Washington. She's passionate about veterinary medicine and understands that pets play an important role in our lives, I think especially now. She is also passionate about WSU, is an active member of the Pierce County Alumni Association chapter, participates in WSU College of Vet Med events, and returns to Pullman every home football weekend to cheer on the Cougs. So that is Shauna. And then our final panelist, Garrett. Still waiting on Garrett, but I'll introduce him anyway. Garrett is the regional coordinator for the Nevada Census 2020. So his industry is government affairs. Garrett was born and raised in Fallon, Nevada, and he attributes his passion for service, leadership, and community to both his small town upbringing and undergraduate experience at WSU. He loved being a Coug. He studied strategic communication and political science within the Honors College. His favorite thing about being a Coug was the friends who became family through his various involvement activities, including student government, being a tour guide, and serving as a resident advisor. Garrett spearheaded the creation of the Cougar Health Fund his senior year when he served as student body vice president. And after graduating from WSU, Garrett pursued a Master's of Science in Politics and Communication from the London School of Economics. He recently completed his program and now works for the state of Nevada as a regional coordinator for the 2020 census. So that is Garrett. Let's see. Oh, I see you there, Garrett. Hello. Let me make you a co-host so you can speak to us. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, perfect. So Garrett, you should be able to unmute yourself, hopefully at this point. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all again for joining us. Let's go ahead and dive into our question portion. And again, when I'm asking these questions and as the panelists answer, if you can think of anything that you might want to know or might want to ask them either as a whole or individually, please chat it in the Zoom chat feature, and we will ask it at the end of our prepared questions. So let's get started with Lindsay. Can you tell us about your time at WSU? What was your major, and were you involved in any student groups while you attended?
Yeah, so I majored in finance and then had 2 minors in international business and political science. I was quite active on campus. I think the best way to explain it is like bucketing it into 3 groups. So I did a lot of engagements with the College of Business, much with like leadership focused sort of responsibilities, and then also like globally minded activities. So for College of Business, I was active in the Entrepreneurship Club, Boeing Scholars, and the Cougs on Wall Street program. For that leadership bucket, a lot of these activities were Residence Hall, student government, Cougs Guys and Gals, Alumni Association, which is great to be volunteering again, and a board member of the Bookie. And then for kind of that global aspect, I was a participant of the International Business Plan competition and studied abroad in both Switzerland and Tanzania. Reflecting on kind of this like disparate array of activities, a quote that I wanted to just like kind of start us out with was from Steve Jobs. And he says, his quote was, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And so all of these things are quite like standalone activities. And then now I've been able to pull on them and I'm grateful for them.
Perfect, and I think it's probably made you a very well-rounded person. So that's awesome. Thank you. Shauna, same question for you. Kind of talk about your student life at WSU, student activities, major, things like that.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself there. Yeah, so gosh, I graduated from WSU undergrad in 2010 in neuroscience with a, I had an emphasis in pre-veterinary medicine. And during my undergraduate career, I was involved with the Student Alumni Ambassadors, which that program really focuses on connecting students with alumni. So kind of like what we're doing now, which is cool. And so I was involved in that club pretty much all 4 years, had a great time, got to attend some really cool Golden and Diamond grad events and everything. It's really kind of made me continue to be involved with WSU even afterwards, and to give back with my local alumni group. I love working with students. Now, I went on to go to veterinary school. I was involved in like 4 different clubs during veterinary school. How I had the time to do that, I'm not sure. But I was a member of the Veterinary Business Management Association, the American Animal Hospital Association, the Canine Club, and a variety of others. Veterinary school really stands out a lot more to me because it was my more recent college experience at WSU. It was a fantastic experience being at the WSU. I feel like in undergrad and veterinary school, I got to see kind of 2 different worlds of WSU, which was interesting. Yeah, I guess that's that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Garrett, same question for you. Kind of talk about your experience studying at WSU.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Sorry I joined a little late, had some technical difficulties, hence my name up there. And Amber, thank you so much for coordinating all this. I graduated WSU in 2018, so pretty recently, and involvement was really what made my WSU experience what it was. So I got involved right away. I was an out-of-state student from Nevada. So moving to Pullman in Washington, I didn't know anyone, and I was pretty active in like high schools, and I knew I wanted to be active in college. So got involved right away, and I like how Lindsay placed it into different buckets. Mine would probably be pretty similar, where I had like my academic involvement, and my leadership involvement, and then some global experiences as well. So academic involvement, I got degrees in political science and strategic communication, and did some different involvement activities within my college, which I really enjoyed. And then was also in the honors college, so worked with them as well. And then in terms of leadership, I was a resident advisor, also did the student alumni ambassadors, which was a really great experience. And pretty much all 4 years. That was definitely like the peak of my involvement experience and really getting to work with our campus partners, community leaders, other students on different issues and things that we could do to make WSU better for everyone. And then also was in fraternity, and with my different global experiences, was able to go to Guatemala and help on a medical mission trip. And that was actually connected with the Murrow College. So they have like a public relations person go. So that was a really cool experience. And then I went to Cuba when it was open in 2015 with Murrow College as well as a backpack journalist. So definitely like all of the involvement opportunities I had at WSU really made my experience what it was, and that's where I met friends who later became family.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Garrett, your audio is coming through a little choppy. So if you want to, maybe you could try to call in like on a cell phone and use that audio, and we could still watch your video, or I'm not sure how to best adjust the audio, because I know with Zoom sometimes there's not much you can do, but if you need help, just message me and we'll see what we can do. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. Let's see, maybe Shauna can answer this one first for us. So we're going to kind of move into your professional path post-graduation. So let's start with kind of job searching. What job search strategies did you use to look for work?
Okay, so I'll go through that. Obviously I'm going to use the word clinic or hospital, which is what most people would probably refer to looking for a job. I'm looking for the right clinic. So just for you guys not in veterinary medicine, that's the word I'll use. But I think a lot of what I'll say probably applies to anybody searching for any job. Really the first challenge for me was figuring out what I wanted in a career and in a first practice or clinic to work at. Really sitting back and saying, what are my core values? What do I look for? What are the traits that I'm looking for in a leader at the hospital that I'm going to be working at? What are, the things that I want to relate to with the business and what their core values are and their mission. And so really kind of taking a step back and looking at kind of the big picture, and then also kind of writing down a list down of what specific bells and whistles did I really want and what did I need? So what were wants, what were needs? We're really kind of taking a step back and figuring out what I wanted, and then also figuring out location and where I'd want to physically be. So those were the first things. And then the challenging part is really looking at places and trying to figure out which ones check all the boxes, but which one's really the best fit for me based off salary, balancing my core values, balancing all the bells and whistles, because some things look good on paper, but when you get there, maybe it's not really the right fit, or maybe there's different things tugging you. And so really kind of sorting out, all of those different aspects into what you're looking for and starting your career was really important, and challenging to really figure out, what is it that I want? What are my core values? What am I really looking for? What would I give up to have something else? And then, physically going through and trying to decipher from job ads, what does this clinic really have? Is this one worth my time applying to? Those were kind of the biggest challenges that I remember in my first job search.
Perfect. Was there anything that was easier than you thought it would be as you were looking through these different ads and kind of researching clinics?
For me, I actually found that once I applied and got through, got offered an interview, I found interviewing always seemed stressful to me. The idea of, okay, now I'm going to be put on the spot, watching the things that I say. But I've always found that once I get into an interview, especially if it's a place where you're connecting with the, I would say with the practice owner, the person interviewing you, I always found that those actually went more smoothly and were much easier than I always felt like they would be. I always had a lot of anxiety or a lot of preparations ahead of time, trying to make sure I would say the right things and everything. But I found that when you actually get into an interview process, it's usually much easier than you've built it up in your head.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Shauna. Okay, Lindsay, same question for you. What job search strategies did you use to look for work?
Yeah. So the strategies I've actually borrowed from a role model of mine. Her name is Emily Aries, and she is CEO and founder of a professional development organization called Bossed Up. So I would recommend everybody on this channel check it out. And in a lot of the webinars and documents that I've read of hers, she kind of lays it out in 2 steps. So step 1 is recognizing in this next career jump, is it a bridge job or one that is really going to serve the purpose of maintaining your income, but may not fulfill all of your passions? Or is it one of those like thoughtful moves? And that second one, that mindful transition, I think it's important to make a list, like Shauna was saying. Make a list and write down, what are you looking for? Put all of your wishes out there, and then find jobs that correspond to it. Maybe go on LinkedIn and set up job alerts so you're getting those notifications. And as time passes, the job search process takes a long time. Perhaps that long list of dream qualities you wanted is narrowed down over time, but at least you're starting with really what you want in mind.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And did you come across any specific challenges from your standpoint and in your industry that just seemed maybe overwhelming or just wasn't something you expected?
Yeah. And I hope this is a call to action for all of us. So what surprised me the most in my career shifts in the past, and still to this day, is how willing my network is to help out. I know many of those on this webinar, it was pitched as a webinar to help us understand our career path and what's next. And so I hope you find this lesson of mine relevant for you all, about how your network is willing to help you. As for how to get started, I think going back to that list, write down what qualities in a job you're interested in, or even rethink it in the sense of who career-wise do you admire. And then if it is, their flexibility because they get to work from home, take that a step further. Like, is it something that's rooted beyond that flexibility? Or is it their leadership approach, their technical skill set? And once you have that in mind and you conduct more research about that individual, then reach out and ask them to set up an informational interview. And I think you'd be surprised to see their willingness to help you and advocate for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Kim Mueller chatted to everyone that link for Bossed Up. So if you're interested in checking out that link, then you can go ahead and follow that. Thank you. Okay, Garrett, let's see how that audio comes through.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the job search strategies you use to look for work?
Yeah, of course. Can you hear me okay, Amber? Is this better?
Much better, yes.
Perfect. Again, sorry so much for the technical difficulties, everyone.
That's
But
okay.
yeah, I think what's been said is I agree with, and absolutely is great strategies to have. I would just add that when you're going through this process, and I'm intentional about using the word process because it does take time, just kind of identifying like the different steps and really giving yourself like grace and patience throughout the process. So the first part I think really is focused on introspection, what Lindsay and Shauna were talking about in terms of knowing like what you want, and also like who you are and finding a job and career that can fit within that, and really taking the time to figure out like what your values are, what your strengths are, and what places and organizations and type of work really excites you. I think another area in the process would be just learning about what's all available. So taking the time to really see like the types of jobs in your industry, the type of employers, big groups, smaller groups, and then taking that one step further as well, and perhaps having coffee and career chats with people that you look up to in the field. And then to go off of what's already been said as well, I think one of the things is it can be uncomfortable to ask for help or to ask for people's time. But in my experience, people are really excited to share their experience and to connect with folks and pay it forward, if you will. So I'd really encourage everyone to take that step, even though it might be a little uncomfortable. And then once you get further along, it will be easier and easier as you're going through it. But really, knowing yourself is really important. And then also knowing what's all available. I was really surprised to find out all the different opportunities that are available, and how that is ever changing, as well as just really leaning into your network, your Coug network, your family, your friends, and letting them know what you're looking for. And then one specific thing that I will also pass on to you all that I have found helpful is once you have that one-page resume, specifically in government affairs, it's really who you know. So being able to find connectors, if you will, so people that you are somewhat connected to, even if it's a really loose tie, and being able to have a phone call with them or grab coffee with them, and share what you're looking for, and then ask if they'd be willing to pass on your resume to some folks that they may know. And that tends to be pretty helpful.
Perfect. I think that's great advice. While you were talking, Shauna also commented, interviews aren't just the business interviewing you, but you interviewing them, which I definitely think is important whenever they ask, do you have any questions for us? It'd be awesome to have questions ready for them, because yeah, it's a two-way street and you want to make sure it's a good fit. So Garrett, you already kind of talked about this at the tail end of that answer, a little bit about networking and how that's really important in your job search. So maybe I'll take it a step further and ask you, how do you kind of get over the nerves of, I want to network, but I don't want to seem pushy, and maybe this person didn't want to read my resume. Do I want to give it to them anyway? Kind of things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that we all have to, like a bridge that we all have to cross, and it definitely can be challenging sometimes. But I think if you are really intentional about what you're hoping to gain and what you want to learn, and you get to know the individual that you're reaching out to, and really make it like worth your time and theirs, they're really typically like willing to help out, and your network is just super important. And again, more often than not, people are happy to help and pay it forward because that's how it typically worked for them as well. So an ask is an ask, and if you're not getting a response back, like know that that's okay as well. You just have to move on. But once you take the time to know what you're wanting and intentional about that, it all becomes a little bit easier.
Perfect. Shauna, was networking important in your job search, or was it more of an individual kind of process for you?
I would say for my initial job search, it's always important. I would say, let me take a step back. So during veterinary school, at least, I attended various conferences, was very involved with the American Animal Hospital Association, and I built a large network of various industry leaders through that participation. And through that, I was able to have some of them be contact people on my resume. So people, references that people could contact if they had questions about me. I got a variety of them offering me jobs at different clinics out of the state, which I was not interested in. But that was kind of helpful. I've maintained relationships with them, and some of those people have helped coach me through other decisions later on. But what I found interesting, and I'm going to use an example. So I'm currently at my second job post-graduation from veterinary school. And my first job, I interviewed really strongly. It was a really great fit. I just wasn't happy living in Seattle specifically. I missed my hometown of Tacoma, where I currently live. And I know they're not that far away, but it was a big difference for me. And so when I was in veterinary school during my third year, I attended a networking event. It was like a brews and networking kind of thing. We had some beers, some food, and the Washington State Veterinary Medical Association was there. I ended up chatting with one of the doctors there for quite some time, asking a lot of questions. We just really connected. And after, she had given me her contact information, I think a week or two later, I got in contact with her and asked if I could do a preceptorship, which is essentially a job, it's like a job shadow that we're required to do in our fourth year of vet school. And so I ended up spending 2 weeks at her veterinary hospital where she worked. She agreed to help me out and let me shadow, which I was thrilled about. And like you guys said, it can be nervous to ask these people. I barely knew her, and that's a big commitment to let somebody hang out with you for 2 weeks and follow your every move at work. But she did. And then life went on. I got my first job. I was pretty happy there. And then for me, my second job I got offered out of the blue. I got a phone call because I had spent time at that clinic and got to know them. They remembered me. And when they had a doctor leave, they contacted me and told me they had a job opening and asked if I was interested. And that's a whole nother story, making that decision. But ultimately, I did take the job. And over the years now, I am the medical director at that clinic. And had I not gone to that networking event, had I not stepped out of my comfort zone, asked that doctor to shadow her, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. So it's just one small example of how, those relationships you build, even if you don't think it's going to get you somewhere in the long run, you never know. So make connections, meet up with people, step out of your comfort zone. It's really important, and you just never know.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And just a small plug for the Alumni Association, we do have local chapters all across the US. So very likely there's one in your area. Right now, a lot of the events obviously are virtual, but we're hoping once things kind of get more back to normal that we'll host more in-person events, and you can get the chance to network with Cougs in your area and maybe meet someone that could make all the difference for you. So Lindsay, same question to you. Was networking important in your job search or relevant in any way?
I think so many of the points have been covered. Shauna, you mentioned how it's important to network now, so when you need it later, you have a strong relationship to rely on. So I would encourage everyone on here, and myself, to start it now, so you get that foundation. The only addition I would add is look at statistics behind this. The networking path, like having that referral or having that kind of internal reference is the biggest precursor to getting a position. I was interested in this, and so that pathway sits at about 30% of those that enter a company came from that personal kind of connection already established. And that is, there's a whole number of ways you can enter a company, if that's on a job board, if that's agency or contract position. And so seeing this one method be so prominent, if you don't do it, others are, and you could miss out, and the company could miss out on having you as a hire.
Perfect, thank you so much. Lindsay, I'm gonna ask you the next question. Before I do that, just a reminder, if you have any questions specifically for one of the panelists or just in general for the group, feel free to chat that to everyone, or you can chat it to me if you'd rather. I'm the host. So yeah, just let us know if you have any questions. All right, so Lindsay, kind of talked about this already, but kind of honing in on the interview process. I know that you talked about how you listed out different things you were looking for, and we're really specific about that. What did you find in the interview that employers were really interested in, or something specific that they were looking for?
Yeah, I have a couple of things here. So one, my company particularly, our director loves the book Good to Great. I haven't read it, but I have read a synopsis of it. And the takeaway is the fact that a successful company is one that hires for key competencies when making that decision. And so I encourage everyone, and I say this again, like this is very retrospective to me too, to read between the lines of a job position and learn about the company as a whole, understand their values, if that is teamwork, problem solving, customer focus, and have those experiences mapped out and ready to go in order to answer those questions. When I talk about mapping out, what that means to me is I'll take a job posting, usually like 2 pages long, lots of bullet points, and below each bullet point, I would say, this is an experience I've had, or this is a training I've had that meets that bullet point. And there's an approach called STAR, which is situation, task, action, result. And so that allows the interviewee or the interview panel to understand and almost put themselves into the exact position you are. And so that mapping out process has a whole host of benefits. One being you have confidence in you applying for that position because you know you have the experience needed. And second, those details that may have been a year, 2 years ago are refreshed in your mind, and that is important. And I also have to mention the fact that there's a gender dimension to this too. And so if you are applying for jobs, there's a study done by Hewlett-Packard that found men will apply to a position after meeting 60% of the job responsibilities, while on average, women won't apply to that same job until 100% are met. And so know that, take that to heart, and put yourself in positions that allow you to debunk that stat.
Perfect. I'm loving all these statistics. So is Shauna. She chatted. Thank you for those stats on networking, Lindsay. That's awesome.
Can I add a little thing?
Yes, please, please.
Cool. It's not big, but one thing I did want to mention in response to Lindsay's, putting yourself out there, don't wait until you meet all the criteria. When I applied for my first job, which, as I mentioned before, was a really great fit, and I was very happy there for many reasons, they were actually asking for somebody with a year of experience. And I just saw that their clinic had met all my core values, and I thought they would be a good fit because they matched all the things that I was looking for, other than they were looking for somebody who had experience, and I did not yet have that. But I went ahead and did that, and I got that job. And it's, it all depends on, if you find something that really does match what you're looking for, sometimes they'll be willing to overlook that maybe you're not meeting all those criteria because you meet those core values, what they're really looking for. It's all about finding the right person. Anyway, that was my 2 cents on that.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's great. And it's always nice to hear success stories of when that kind of thing happens and emboldens us all, I think. So Shauna, did you have anything that you thought employers were kind of looking for, or maybe specific to the clinics? Did they kind of bring up things in the interviews that you were like, oh, a lot of them are asking those same questions?
I think for me, it's my second job. I didn't really go through a main interview, but for my initial interview, a lot of it stemmed from them really gauging my confidence and how ready I was to practice. Asking me, truly what I was nervous about, and me being, open with that and discussing with them how I was going to overcome, those things that I was, concerned about when starting practice. If I was concerned about, wow, I'm a little bit nervous about surgeries and doing those alone. How would I overcome that? Well, maybe I'd ask that I want to make sure somebody else is in the building when I'm doing them. So if I had a question, you could easily pop in. I don't need hand holding, but I would like somebody to give me a second opinion or answer those questions. And so just being prepared with a lot of times with your what you're concerned about, what your weaknesses might be, and then not only those, but how you're planning to overcome them always seemed to be a common thread in the interview process.
Perfect. Thank you. And Garrett, do you have any more insight about kind of what employers were looking for during your interview processes, or what helped you prepare?
Yeah, I would say in addition to looking at the requirements, one thing that has been noted, like even if you're not reaching all the requirements completely, if it's something that's still a good fit and something that you're really passionate about, and you have the time and capacity to put in an application, would definitely encourage you to still do so as well. And I think one of the biggest things that people are looking for oftentimes is someone who is willing to learn, and someone who is coachable, and that can really fit well within like the team and the culture. I think that's one more thing I would add, is just like emotional intelligence and being able to really be a good fit with folks who are already currently working there, especially if you're working with a smaller team or group. Someone, they're interviewing you and getting to know you as a person as well. So they're looking for someone that they want to spend time with and will be spending time with in their job, as that it is a big chunk of our lives, is what we do for a living. So just being yourself and being able to show up in the interview as such, and seeing if that would be like a good fit. And then specifically within government affairs, I think just knowing like what's going on in the world, knowing certain like policy positions and issues, and the ability to write well and to write fast is something that people are looking for within that industry.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think culture fit is becoming more and more relevant to job interviews nowadays. So I think that's great advice. Okay, so we have a question that came through here. Do you have any specific advice about changing industries? I'm interested in transitioning to a nonprofit industry. I don't know if any panelists have any thoughts right off the top of their head on that.
I can add some points.
Thank
So
you.
I did a pivot about 5 years into my career. So I was at a Fortune 50 company in a high potential program, had a really cool role. And I got to the point, like the person asking this question, that I started questioning if my values align with the company values. And my advice to you is kudos for reflecting and seeing that misalignment. No, it's going to take a lot of bravery and a lot of work to make that industry switch. I can tell you it can happen. It did happen to me. I went from aerospace into cancer research. So big switch. But I think what was important in that process was me treating it like a second job. So I was working probably 10, 12-hour days. And then after, put in several hours to get myself relevant. If that was learning the industry from articles, if that was finding like free trainings or trainings that were affordable in my purview to take on. And then in the application process, having a very well-written cover letter to share why I should be considered, because most likely you're not most qualified. I wasn't most qualified. And so it was important to at least get my resume, at least get my cover letter to the hiring desk. I would say it's more common now to see these like industry switches. And what that means is it puts you in a good position, because you could have somebody on the interview team that did something similar and sees the fact that me going from corporate to public sector has strengths for the company. And so you'll have some internal rallying behind you.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Shauna, Garrett, do you have anything to add to that answer?
I'll add a few cents real quick. So I would just say, way to be brave. I think that if you're noticing that you're unhappy in your current situation, it really takes a lot of bravery to take a step back and be like, this isn't my place or my fit. And then just to add on what to Lindsay said, I would also just say that within the industry switch, don't forget the added value that you bring as someone who has that lens, having been in that other field. You probably have more transferable skills and ways that you can uniquely contribute to the team that you're hoping and the industry that you're hoping to be a part of within your switch.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Also drawing your attention to the chat, Lindsay posted the 2 resources she referenced in her previous answer. So if you wanted links to those, you can go ahead and find them there. So we had another question from Devin Fisher. How do you approach an answer if asked if you have the requisite experience? So maybe, like Shauna, you said, weren't quite meeting those specifications, but how do you approach that answer if they ask you point blank?
Well, I know in my field, at least, my typical answer or my advice to somebody would be, if that's a skill that is required and being asked of, and it's not a skill that you've yet obtained, if that's something you are willing to and wanting to develop, which hopefully you are because you applied for that position, looking out before the interview, looking up, how are ways you could get trained so that you have an answer in mind. So if I was to say, I'm not proficient in ultrasound, an example from my field at least, maybe going into an interview where they want somebody with ultrasound experience, I could say, well, I've looked up, there are these these continuing education opportunities. I found 3 of them, one in August, one September, that I could attend. If you'd be willing to support me in that, I would be more than happy to do that and take that weekend to learn that skill, work on developing it, what my game plan would be. And even going into looking at, I may have a lag in learning, but looking at the numbers, it's going to bring in this much revenue to the company. I'm going to be this big of an asset. I may not have that skill now, but I can build it up, and just being confident and really showing that you've done the research, and that they're not going to have to do the work for you to get you trained and worked up. They might already know about those things and have that idea in mind. But coming prepared with an answer and showing that you have put in time and thought into that, and not just coming, I don't know, I'll figure it out as I go. That's not an answer an interviewer wants to see. They want to see that you've put in the time, how you're going to obtain those skills that they're looking for. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
Perfect. I think that's a great answer. Lindsay, Garrett, anything to add on that before we go into the next question? Okay, perfect. So let's start with Garrett this time. If you could do college over again, what's one thing you would do differently?
That's such a hard question, because I feel like everything that happens for a reason, right? And you take your lessons learned and move on. But I would just say, in general, like, I loved being a Cougar and loved my experience at Washington State. So I would just say, from the things that I remember, it was me doing things I loved with people that I love. So I would just lean into that and spend more time doing things I love with people I love.
to where like I still am like doing classwork and things like that too.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Lindsay, same for you. If you could do college over again, what's one thing you would do differently?
This is a question that I'm so glad you gave us a heads up on, Amber. I had to sleep on this one to have my answer. So there's a recently launched program called the Mindfulness-Based Emotional and Social Intelligence. A lot of words, acronym to MESSY. And it's taught through the Honors College. I think it's going to expand to other students as well. And the overarching purpose is to gain greater self-awareness. I think for a lot of my college, I was living off of a to-do list, and taking this class early, I would have had better balance and I wouldn't have been burned out. And taking that class probably would help me to this day. And so for those who are still at WSU, I would check that out. And for those that have graduated, there is a similar sort of course. Again, I haven't taken MESSY, so I just see some parallels here, offered through Coursera, and it's called the Science of Well-Being. It's a course that a couple folks have shared with me, probably because they see I need it. And it is taught by Yale University. It was one of the most popular classes a couple years back at the university, and has that same sort of goal of increased self-awareness to prevent burnout, and planning your day a little bit more balanced. Luckily, it's free right now due to COVID-19, and so there is no barrier from me not taking it. I have a girlfriend that is keeping me accountable, so I will be signing up in the next day or two, and would recommend it to anyone on here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Shauna, same question to you. If you could do college over again, what's one thing you would do differently?
I have two answers to that. So first thing would be that I was so focused in getting into veterinary school. I wanted to study abroad, and I chose not to because it would have made me, with the neuroscience major, the credits don't transfer well when you study abroad, and so I would have had to take another semester. So it would have put me into basically 5 years of undergrad before getting into veterinary school rather than 4. And I was so determined, that was my goal. I'd always wanted to be a veterinarian, and I was so focused on that I missed out on a big opportunity. And I feel like having that experience of studying abroad somewhere for an entire semester just is something that I wish I would have done, because it's much harder when you own a house and you have a career to, take that amount of time and immerse yourself in another culture. So I'd encourage anybody who's still in college to find the way to make that work if that's something you want to do. Our lives are pretty long. And so, one more year of college, plus it's college. I would have loved it being at WSU for another year. But at the time I was just wanting to get into vet school and, get through the program and start my career. So, and that's one regret. The other regret is I would have joined the Cougar Mug Club. Spent more time at the Cougar.
Very nice. Okay, perfect. So Victoria Peterson in the chat mentioned that she's currently taking the Science of Wellbeing course that Lindsay mentioned, and she says she highly recommends it. So that's awesome that people are taking advantage of that program. We had a question come through. I was part of the global campus. How would you suggest I tap into my local alumni network? That is a great question that I think I can probably help answer. So like I mentioned before, we do have regional chapters across the US. We've structured those around the highest concentration of Cougs in those areas. So definitely there are more chapters in Washington State than there are on the East Coast. However, there are still chapters spread throughout the US, so you can always take a look at our website to find the closest chapter to you. We're also kind of building out more of these online engagement opportunities. A lot of them are career development, professional development based, but we're also looking into more just personal development, things like that. So always check on our website on the events tab. In fact, I can show you really quickly, why not? Just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So this is the homepage here. You'll learn about some of our major opportunities here. Groups and volunteers, this is where you can take a look at the different chapters and clubs. Like I said, a lot are in Washington, but there's quite a few out of state as well. And then we have our events tab over here where we keep everything, a running list. The event calendar includes online and in-person events, and this online event calendar is just online events. And recently we've been posting a lot of events from organizations on campus, like UREC has a bunch of different opportunities, Student Affairs, and Global Connections. And we list those there. So I know that that might be a chance to connect with Cougs as well. So if you're interested, you can check out those resources. Perfect. Okay, well, I think we have one more question that I will pose to our panelists before we conclude. That question is, what advice would you give anyone who is looking for work during this challenging time? And let's start with Lindsay.
Yeah, I would recommend everyone to take or make the most of their personal time. I think we probably have less of that now, especially if you are a mom, a dad, really affected by COVID-19. And so maybe reframe that into, yes, it's personal time, but it's also investing in yourself. And so that could be reaching out to your network, which we talked about a lot today. That could be bolstering your technical skills. I had mentioned a couple of the pro bono trainings that are out there. Others to mention, yeah, so Coursera, much of their catalog is free right now. Pluralsight, it's more like IT focused. There's a lot of training there. Tableau is a data analysis tool, free training there. And some of the community colleges in your area may also offer free training. So yeah, as I mentioned, yeah, take this time to do networking, bolster up whatever skills you need, you want for that next career move, and then conduct mock interviews. I know I will conduct several. It's a vulnerable time, and so do it with people you trust. Be open to criticism, and know that it's another way that you're investing in yourself. But yeah, I encourage everyone to recognize that investing in yourself and making time for that personal time is going to pay off.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Garrett, let's go to you next. What advice would you give anyone who's looking for work during this time?
Yeah, it is a quite challenging time, and I think just to take a step back when you can and acknowledge the environment that you're in and lean into all the good that still remains. So being able to recognize that you're not alone in this process. A lot of people are in the same boat as you. And as Lindsay mentioned, I think this can be a great time to really bolster your skills and connect with folks. One of my mentors shared with me earlier that the best time to network is when you don't need a job. So if you're able to take advantage of that, I definitely would do so. But really my biggest advice would be just to be kind to yourself. It's hard and it's challenging, and to be as patient as you can and really lean into people and ask for help when you need it. And just know that something will come up, and also know your self-worth as well. Don't apply for jobs that don't necessarily excite you, or just because like you feel like you need it. Like if you're able to take the time and are in a place to do so, I would take the time and be patient and kind to yourself.
I like that advice. I needed that advice too. Thank you, Garrett. Shauna, what advice would you give anyone who's looking for work?
I think Lindsay and Garrett said it so well. I don't know that I have much more to add other than, you know, a lot of us do have a little bit of extra time on our hands right now. And so it's a really great opportunity to take that step back and do some of that introspective thought, figuring out what you really are looking for, and and build that confidence in yourself so that when jobs are hiring, it's probably going to be competitive, and so having that confidence, knowing what you're looking for, all of the things that we've talked over this last hour are going to be super helpful in making you prepared and making you stand out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it. Thank you for our lovely panelists and for all of your advice and expertise. I think this has been really helpful even for me to hear your answers. Shauna, you got a shout out in the chat from Sandra Brab, just making sure you saw that. We do have another Cougar Career Academy coming up at the end of May, May 26th. I'll put some info up on the screen here. So you have that. It's going to be another panel about people who found work during the 2008 to 2010 recession and kind of how they navigated that transition. So hopefully that will also be helpful if you're in the midst of a job search. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Go Cougs, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Go Cougs.
Go
Go
Cougs.
Cougs.
Thanks. Go Cougs.